Hello to all my readers and listeners at Break Free Media. This is Karen Hunt, and I am so happy to have you here. Welcome, especially to my new paid subscribers. I have quite a few new subscribers, so I'm just so very thankful to have you here. Thank you for your wonderful support for my work. Today on this Monday discourse, I wanted to talk about what does recognizing a state of Palestine actually mean? And even as the world demands Israel lay down its arms, Hamas refuses to do the same, claiming a legitimate national and legal right to bear arms. We want a sovereign Palestinian state, they say, with Jerusalem as its capital. Well, increasingly, Israel is becoming isolated from the rest of the world. More and more nations are demanding that Palestine be recognized as a state. 4 days ago, Britain announced that it will recognize a Palestinian state in September at the United Nations. At least the United States, thanks to President Donald Trump, and even if you don't like him for other reasons, at least you can be grateful for this. He is still standing firm in support of Israel. He publicly broke with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The US is not in that camp, he said. And he told this to reporters as they were on Air Force One. The UK had followed France, which declared last week that it will recognize Palestinian statehood at the United Nations General Assembly in September. Most recently, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada will recognize Palestine as a state in September. Big day coming up, right? At the United Nations General Assembly. All of these nations have growing Muslim populations, in case you hadn't noticed. And I don't think they want to antagonize these populations. But that's not, of course, the only reason. There's a lot of political posturing that goes along with their statements. British attorney Malcolm Shaw, who defended Israel at the International Court of Justice in The Hague against South Africa's accusations that the Jewish state is perpetrating genocide against the Palestinians, responded to Starmer, saying that any plan to recognize the state of Palestine is premature and maybe have unintended consequences, and that it confuses and distorts any attempt at a peaceful two-state solution. He described Keir's decision to make statehood dependent on the behavior of Israel, a third country, as remarkable. So what he's saying is, the statehood of Hamas is not, the statehood of Palestine is not dependent on Palestine, but dependent on the third country, Israel. This is exceptional, he said, and frankly, not in keeping with the tenor of the relevant international principles. Recognition at the current time will be seen as a prize for precipitating the war on October 7, 2023, with its attendant rapes and massacres. He also argues that the Palestinian territories do not currently satisfy the criteria for statehood. So first of all, we need to know, what exactly is a state? So there are some key features that define a sovereign state. Firstly, it must have a defined territory with recognized boundaries over which it exercises exclusive jurisdiction and control. It must have a permanent population residing within its territory. And thirdly, a sovereign state requires a functioning government that maintains order and makes decisions on behalf of the state. And lastly, it must have the capacity to enter into relations and agreements with other states, signifying its recognition and participation in the international community. So these criteria are generally accepted in international law, as outlined in the Montevideo Convention of 1933. Well, Palestine really meets none of these conditions. I say Palestine. Now, some might say at least the second point is true. The second point, that it has a permanent population residing within its territory. But even Gazans themselves continue to insist that they are refugees. Now, they cannot have it both ways. They cannot claim refugee status because that means that the land does not belong to them, right? They are without a home, while at the same time saying that they are a state. And this is kind of pretty much a catch-22. Because if they give up their refugee status, not only do they lose all the billions of dollars, or at least Hamas loses all those billions of dollars. The Gazan people were never seeing that anyway. But they also lose the right to insist that Israel belongs to them. Because that would mean, yes, they would have to agree that Israel is a state also that has a right to exist, as they have a right to exist. But they do not want a state of Israel. They do not want a two-state solution. This is a joke for the benefit of the West. There is not even an agreement between those who live within Gaza and what they call the West Bank about who should rule. They hate each other. They certainly hate the Palestinian Authority. I don't know which hates them more, people in the West Bank or people in Gaza. And there is certainly no one who has risen to the level of leadership in Gaza or the West Bank. Mahmoud Abbas, that for him to be the leader, that's a joke. The people themselves would never accept that. Despite Israel having won the war, Hamas still refuses to surrender. This is another big problem. Hello? And as I have previously explained, clans and criminal gangs now roam the streets throughout Gaza and also the West Bank as well, each one vying for power, causing chaos and violence horrifically. But all of this is blamed on Israel. Apparently it's just the IDF that's causing all of this violence. Israel is called the occupier once again, all right? When it really wants nothing to do with this territory. Israel left Gaza in 2005. How many times do we have to repeat this? And people act as if they are the occupier. The Gazans had a free election. They chose this path. But October 7th was a turning point for Israel. Now, what is Israel supposed to do with so many contradictions and all of them being laid at its feet? At this point, Israeli forces are the only forces keeping Gaza from descending into complete and utter violence and chaos. Imagine if the IDF left now. There would be complete and utter, just rampant death and violence. And yet again, it is all blamed on Israel as it tries desperately to keep some sort of order. The onus has been put on Israel. Fix Gaza's problems or else. Essentially, so these outside nations that have no right to do this are threatening Israel, not Hamas, Israel. Keir Starmer has said that unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire in Gaza, stops building settlements in the West Bank, and commits to a two-state solution, they will declare Palestine a state. So this is crazy talk. It's political posturing. Unless Israel does these things, they are going to declare the West Bank, they are going to declare a Palestinian state, the UK, in this big mess. But all of this is just one more victory for Hamas, whose propaganda campaign, funded and produced by Iran, Qatar, and the Muslim Brotherhood, has turned world opinion against Israel. Hamas is no longer viewed as a terrorist organization. They are now defenders of Gazans purposely being starved and gunned down by Israel. So it's no longer a battle between Hamas and Israel. It's now a battle between Israel and the people of Gaza that apparently Israel is genociding. Does no one see how twisted this is? Israel won the war, but Hamas still refuses to surrender or give up the hostages, by the way. It banks on winning by lies believed by the masses around the world. Hamas is the one shooting its own people, exposing them to danger. Hamas is the one who does not care how many Gazans die. In fact, the more the better for their propaganda. At the same time as Hamas accuses Israel of starving Gazans, it is starving hostage Aviatar David. So Hamas just released a video and photos of Aviatar David and proudly showing off how they are starving him in a tunnel. Then they made him dig his own grave and they filmed it. And I have the horrific, I have it all there. You can look at it. And I encourage you to do so. We should not shy away from the truth. Now, why would Hamas release such a video? Surely it reflects badly on them, but incredibly, it doesn't. The world ignores it. What is Hamas doing? It is showing the world that it has won the media war. It owns us. It can do what it wants. It can commit the most heinous acts against Jews and be seen as the good guys. The world will not condemn Hamas. Instead, the world will reward them. I'm going to repeat it and say never forget. Hamas made Aviatar David dig his own grave and proudly filmed it for all the world to see, just at the same time as nations around the world were demanding that Hamas be rewarded with statehood. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Hamas has made it clear it will not disarm unless an independent Palestinian state is established. But an independent Palestinian state cannot be established until Hamas surrenders and is disarmed. It's a waiting game. Hamas wants its own people to starve. It's counting on it. It is making it happen. Just as Hamas starves Aviatar David, it starves Gazans. And it can keep the propaganda campaign going a long time. And if it can keep it going long enough to where true starvation occurs by preventing any aid from getting through and then blame it all on Israel, Hamas will win in the end. Hamas will never surrender. It will just keep playing these games. Please listen to what Hamas has said in its own statement. It said, in response to media reports quoting U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, claiming Hamas has shown willingness to disarm, we reaffirm that resistance and its arms are a legitimate national and legal right as long as the occupation continues. This right is recognized by international laws and norms, and it cannot be relinquished except through the full restoration of our national rights. Now, the full restoration of their national rights, as if they were already a nation and Israel has taken that away from them. First and foremost, the establishment of an independent, fully sovereign Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. Can you imagine Hamas in control of Jerusalem as its capital? And then, once all of that happens, Hamas promises, oh yes, well, once you give us all of that, we will disarm. Who believes that? Who would be insane enough to believe such a thing? Hamas discounted Mr. Witkoff's trip on Friday to a Gaza aid distribution site as designed to mislead public opinion, polish the image of the occupation, and provide it with political cover for its starvation campaign and continued systematic killing of defenseless children and civilians in the Gaza Strip. So I would beg of you to see who is actually doing the starving. Let's be rational. And I want to briefly mention this problem that's been raised of settlers. These Jewish families are being demonized in very one-sided stories in the media, which is not to say that they don't do anything wrong, that they don't commit violent acts. I'm not saying that. But it is always a one-sided story. So to show how this is happening, let's look at the recent case of Yanon Levy. Despite being suspected of fatally shooting a Palestinian in a deadly incident in the southern West Bank, this young man, Yanon Levy, was released from house arrest on Monday. That sounds terrible, right? But the judge said during the hearing that evidence collected, you won't hear this part on social media, evidence collected also from the Palestinian side supported his lawyer's claim, that there was no causal link between the shooting and the victim's death, and that Levy acted in self-defense. People downplay the throwing of stones in Gaza, and that is apparently what was happening here. They even make fun of it as if it isn't a big deal. The symbol that they give us is of a child throwing a small stone at a tank. It's like, David against Goliath. But in reality, this isn't what happens. And I have a video here. So take a look at what happened in Los Angeles when protesters started throwing what they are rocks. I mean, the same as, rocks, stones, same difference, off of a bridge at police. I mean, it's horrific. Look at it. Rocks, stones, it's the same thing. If you're hit in the head by a stone, it can kill you. We all know that this is a form of punishment in Islam, to stone a person to death. And in his book, Son of Hamas, Mossab Hassan Yosef describes how this is the first act of terrorism Palestinian children are taught, to throw stones at the IDF. This leads to their first experiences of incarceration and hardens them to continue on to more violent acts. So what did the court discover in this case? Dozens of Palestinians, in fact, were throwing stones at Levy. Put yourself in his situation. What would you do if you had a gun? We Americans have guns, right? His lawyer spoke of the danger he faced in a life-threatening moment. Even if they managed to connect my client Levy to the shooting, the danger here is clear. And so he is being released, as well as 4 Palestinians who were arrested earlier for throwing these stones. So imagine what will happen next. Tensions will escalate. The situation will get worse. Hatred will grow. And instead of 2 sides working together to solve problems, there will be enmity. And I'm not, again, excusing violence on the part of settlers. I'm not excusing any violence. I'm showing how there is always more to the story than what the media tells you. What we expect of Israel, we never expected of our own settlers in the United States. So I want to take a quick little journey back, looking at the history of Oklahoma. Oklahoma is known as the Sooner State. The nickname came from settlers who rushed, so there was the land rush of 1889, and these settlers jumped the gun, as it were, and rushed in ahead of when it was supposed to happen. So at noon on April 27th, a cavalry bugle signaled the official start of the run for 3,100 square miles of land that had been Indian territory. But these settlers slipped in early to claim prime plots before the legal opening, and they became known as Sooners. Their actions followed years of pressure from boomers. We all recognize that term today. And these were groups who had tried to settle the land despite federal restrictions. So the opening of Oklahoma Territory was carved from land promised to Native nations, along with subsequent land runs, and it eventually led to the dissolution of tribal governments and the creation of the state of Oklahoma in 1907. So the term Sooner, it began as a rebuke against these people who rushed in too quickly, because they broke the rules. But over time it evolved into a symbol of ambition, a willingness to act, and it reflected the pioneering spirit that shaped the state. I suppose we now should be ashamed of the pioneering spirit of the first settlers, right? It cannot be denied that they pushed out local tribes, there was violence committed, and due to the fact they were able to do this because they were more advanced and had superior fighting methods. And of course, the settlers in America who came from Europe, they are not the same as the settlers of Israel and the West Bank. We can make some comparisons, but they are certainly not the same. Only Native Americans have the right to say they lay claim to American land for centuries. Only Jews have the right to say they lay claim to the land of Israel for centuries. So no one disputes Native Americans' claims, even though we've run all over them. Why do so many millions of people refuse to admit that Jews have this same right, that they have exercised that right, or that they even have a true history of being in the region, or that they even exist as a people, which now it is being claimed even that Jews no longer even exist, if they ever even existed at all. The fact remains that if anyone has a right of return, it's the Jews to a land where they historically lived for thousands of years. Jerusalem is for Jews what Mecca is for Muslims. Yet they are supposed to give it up to terrorists who vow every day to kill every last Jew. We already see what they did to the Jews' most sacred site, their temple. They built a mosque on top of it. And on top of that, they called their attack the Al-Aqsa flood, named after that mosque. Apparently, Jews should not have any right to anything at all, not even one small slice of land to call home. It's a height of hypocrisy that people who live in a land that conquered others, as happens, by the way, throughout history. I mean, can anyone say that they don't have ancestors that were not colonizers or that didn't invade some other place at some point? So yet people have this obsession with Israel that they don't apply to anywhere else for simply defending itself against invaders who make it clear that they intend to conquer and colonize not only Israel, but the entire world. Now, in America, we believe in defending ourselves, and I used to not realize how important the right to bear arms was for Americans. Now I'm so thankful for that right. And I think of Zohran Mamdani's reaction to the horrible shooting in New York that happened last week when 4 people were killed along with a police officer. Oh yes, he made a very nice comment about the officer tragically gunned down. And he turned it into a political statement about immigrants, and I quote what he had to say. Officer Didaral Islam was one of 4 people killed in yesterday's horrific shooting, a Bangladeshi immigrant who joined the NYPD 4 years ago. He lived in Parkchester with his pregnant wife, their 2 children, and his elderly parents. A horrific, truly a tragedy. When he joined the police department, his mother asked him why he would pursue such a dangerous job. He told her it was to leave behind a legacy that his family could be proud of. He has done that and more. I pray for him, his family, and honor the legacy of service and sacrifice he leaves behind. What a wonderful thing for Mamdani to say, right? Well, except that you can see what he really thinks about the NYPD in his tweet below. He is a complete fraud. This is what he thinks of the NYPD, really. We don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need is to defund the NYPD. But your deal with NYC mayor uses budget tricks to keep as many cops as possible on the beat. No to fake cuts. Defund the police. Awesome, right? What a faker. It really is looking like Mamdani will be mayor of New York as of 8:30 a.m. on Friday, New York time. He had an 81.4% chance of winning the race, according to the betting website Polymarket. Now, he's been labeled as a socialist, as a communist, but the reality is, we mustn't forget, he is just one more would-be tyrant. And as such, he is the lowest form of hypocrite, and I will show you some more reasons why. He has called ICE agents in masks militarized oppression because, you know, nobody should force those who come to the United States illegally to leave, right? Which is not to say, again, that some of these agents haven't committed some bad acts or that people haven't been scooped up who should not have been scooped up, that injustices have not occurred. But generally, the point of this has been to get rid, we need to abide by our policies of not allowing illegal people into our country, right? And at the same time as all of this, he recently returned from Uganda, where he celebrated his own lavish wedding. And, you know, he might want to defend the police in your neighborhood, but he and his privileged guests were guarded by more than 20 Special Forces Command Unit guards, masked riflemen, military tents, and a phone jamming system. I wonder what Ugandans think of that, the ordinary people in Uganda. The party was held at his parents' property in the billionaire neighborhood of Buziga Hill outside of the capital of Kampala. The house is set, it's way back from the road on 2 acres of lush gardens surrounded by trees. It has a breathtaking panoramic view of Victoria Lake, and it features at least 3 security gates. But that's not the worst of it. I don't know how many more times I have to say it. Mamdani is a 12er Muslim, no different from the Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran. No matter what cloak he puts on, be it communist or socialist, Mamdani is first and foremost a Muslim, and his wish for Israel and the Jews, whether he says it out loud now or waits until it is too late to stop it, is the same as Hamas's wish. For Israel to cease to exist, which means, of course, as we know, the death of every Jew. And then, moving on, for democracy to cease to exist. And for Islam, not communism. Although we also can see, and I've written about this quite a bit, how communism has joined forces with Islam and with the far right to create this coalition against Jews in Israel. It is Islam that he wants ultimately, though, to rule in America. That is what every devout Muslim wants, is for Islam to rule. And we all know what happens next. A bloodbath of Jews and anyone who dares to defend them. Recognizing the state of Palestine is a fantasy born in hell that will lead to that hell becoming reality, not just in Israel, but throughout the world. Rewarding those who purposely starve Jews and don't even hide it, but proudly display their evil deeds to the world, shows that mass delusion has overtaken ordinarily reasonable people. Or, I'm sorry to say, but perhaps it just reveals what has always been boiling beneath the surface, just waiting for the right encouragement to rise: hatred of Jews. Could it really be that simple? To burn the truth into our minds, here are the words of Ghazi Hamad, a senior member of the Hamas Politburo, who told Al Jazeera just this weekend, that is right now. This is what he said in an interview. He actually asked the interviewer, why are all the countries recognizing the Palestinian state today? Before October 7th, did any country dare recognize a Palestinian state? And he continues by saying, the fruits of October 7th are what caused the entire world to open its eyes to the Palestinian issue, and they are moving toward it with force. That is, that the Palestinian people are a people who deserve a country. So it is all thanks to October 7th. October 7th was the impetus, was the moment that turned the world against Jews. And this is a big win for Hamas. But people will not remember what this despicable man said shortly after October 7th. And it was nothing about a two-state solution. It was all about annihilating Israel. And you can hear him as he clearly states it. I have the video here, that the Al-Aqsa flood operation will happen time and time again until Israel is annihilated. He adds that Palestinians are willing to pay the price and that they are proud to sacrifice martyrs. Everything we do is justified, he says. And there is the video. He said it, and he is saying it again. The message, the intent does not change. I will not stop speaking about this. I know many people don't want to hear it, but there is a time when people made such warnings in the past. Do you remember that time in the past? That when people made such warnings as I am making now and people laughed it off? They continued on their comfortable lives throughout Germany, France, Italy, wherever, and then all hell broke loose upon them. If we do not stand against the tide today, it will overcome us tomorrow. Okay, that is my, look at my hair. That is my discourse for today. A lot of, I just have so much on my heart about this, and I just want people to recognize it and to understand what is really going on here. It's this huge propaganda campaign, and they are winning this propaganda campaign. The fact that that Hamas can show a starving Jew to the world, and at the same time, these major nations insist that Israel, meet their demands, is so outrageous, and it's beyond horrific. Okay, that's it for today. God bless you all. I'm traveling to Los Angeles tomorrow. I'll be there for a few days, then it's back to New York. And thank you all again for all of you who have subscribed, become paid subscribers. Please do write comments. Please do share with others. Take this all to heart so that you are able to have your own discourses with people. We need to speak out. We need to argue for the truth against the lies. All right. God bless you all.